He was perhaps one of Esther Arunga Timberlake's best acquaintances during her short stay in Kenya as a young adult. Nimrod Onyango, now officially known as Joseph Helen, is a musician who wears many hats. He refers to himself as a preacher, farmer, publisher, a teacher in his own music school, a relationship counselor, and a businessman. He can't quite quantify his family's worth.
It totals up to hundreds of billions. It's family business.
Esther regarded him as a spiritual father. 5 years down the road, she says of him, "This man made me almost lose faith in God. Because of him and his minions, I completely lost faith in humanity." End of quote. I visited the saxophonist in their new palatial residence in Karen to hear his side of the story.
One day when I was performing music in a church, ICC, International Christian Center, she was emceeing in that function, and I was providing music. So after the function, she came to me and said, "Look, I've been looking for you." Because then I was running a program called WATA, Way to the Aisle, teaching young people about marriage and stuff like that, dating, and how to get into a proper marriage relationship. And she was interested because she wanted to get married. She said, "Look, since you're the one teaching this thing, I want to be as close as possible." So she joined our church, and the church is called Finger of God.
Finger of God, founded by Helen and his wife Wagikuyu Kogi Helen.
Hi, Muski.
Esther's dedication to the ministry saw her bestowed the responsibility and title of the apostle in charge of harvesting souls, besides other duties. With hindsight, she now regrets how she was blindly devoted to the extent she couldn't deliver on the job she was paid to do. "I probably did a total of 5 features and 3 field stories my whole time at KTN, which is a real pity. And that is why," she adds, "despite all the years I spent in media, I never developed a single friendship with a media personality." She claims she was not allowed even to attend family weddings or funerals. She does make very serious allegations that as, let me call you the grandmaster or the leader of the Finger of God Church, that you were involved in sex orgies. Sex orgies were going on in that church.
That's a lie.
It's a lie?
That's a big, big lie. Esther didn't say those words. My entire family were at this church. How do you involve yourself in a sex orgy and your father-in-law is there, your mother-in-law is there, your biological mother is there, your brothers and sisters are there? How possible is that?
At one point, Esther claims Helen made sexual advances at her under the guise of healing breast cancer that he could spiritually foresee. It sounds very, very strange that someone of my age could fall for such lies, she reckons in her email. But you have to understand that by this time, he had reeled me into believing that he was a man of God.
That's not true. That's my cousin.
Her response, Onyango is by no means, shape or form a relative of mine. As time went by, Esther notes that she started sinking into depression, but instead of leaving, she writes, "I worked double hard for the ministry, though I was miserable and drowning in debt. It is in this miserable state that my husband came to my rescue." End of quote. Helen and Quincy Timberlake, childhood friends whose paths crossed again in adulthood just as the former TV anchor entered the scene.
So then I did Project Fame, Tasker Project Fame, in 2009 as music director. Before then I was not so well known. So after Tasker Project Fame, I think a lot of people got to know about me. And one Quincy Timberlake watched me. So he started sending me messages on Facebook. He first sent a friend request as Quincy Timberlake, and I thought, who is this? But I accepted anyway. And then he started sending me messages just on the wall saying, "Do you remember me?" I said, "No, I don't remember you." That we went to school together in, primary school, Kokoro Primary School. I grew up country. And I said, "Well, I went to school with very many people, but I don't remember Quincy Timberlake." So then he told me then he was called Joginder Singh. I said, oh, perfect, I remember you. He was my desk mate.
Oh, really?
Yes. And he was called Jogging the same.
Convinced that he had just returned from the USA, Helen claims he granted Quincy accommodation.
The day he moved in, Esther drives in her nice black BMW. And he looks at Esther and says, wow, it's you. And Esther says, yeah, it's me. And then they start talking their thing about Wollongong University, how they were in Wollongong University together. So I'm here looking at both of them like this and saying, this guy was my desk mate. Now you want to tell me he was your schoolmate?
Esther, however, says her husband did not study in Australia but took a long-distance course from a university in Melbourne, Australia.
This guy just hit the ground running at the parking lot. Yeah. And at that time, Esther was engaged to Wilson Malaba to be married in April. So I said, but Esther, you're in a relationship.
She called off the engagement. By that time, Esther says she had lost a lot of weight. Kenyans started complaining about the way I looked on TV. She says, my hair started getting shaggy. I never had time or money to go to the salon regularly. The spark was gone from my eye. I was driving a BMW, but I was so broke. End of quote.
Drama started right from there.
From Quincy's arrival?
Yes.
Their drama would play out in the theatre of politics as well, where both Helen and Quincy would express interest in the presidency.
I'm happily announcing today to you, fearless, doubtless, apaperless, apestixiless, and doigmless.
Fast forward February 2010, Esther would be arrested and charged alongside the former deskmates and 6 other members for alleged involvement in cult-like activities at the Finger of God Church. The court in 2011, however, acquitted all the accused for lack of evidence. But Timberlake reportedly remained in police custody on suspicion of being in the country illegally. Esther apparently married him while in custody. Helen now equates her love for Quincy to a drug. Do you think Esther has been hypnotized all this time?
This is beyond hypnotism, because hypnotism is mostly a game. This is serious witchcraft. Urogi.
But looking back, Esther says, quote, nowadays I think that apart from me being extremely naive, Onyango was using strong charms on me. I just could not see any evil in him, and I humbly accepted to be his spiritual daughter.
Quincy, I will emphasize, where he beats everybody is that he uses supernatural witchcraft power.
My husband snatched me from fire, and because of that, they passionately hated him, she reasons. I have been married to my husband for 4 years. Don't you think I have observed his conduct this long? He is being held in hospital right now. He is in a hospital at the Arthur Gorey Correctional Centre in Queensland, Australia. She hasn't seen him for 2 months now. She adds, if my husband was practicing witchcraft, by now it would have worn off, and I would be saying different things, but I am not.
I was investigating the fellow to find out who he really was. Then I found the guy that was advising him is some old mzee, and this guy is a crystal ball gazer and a fortune teller who looks at crystals or looks at water and makes predictions and palm reading and things like that.
My husband has never hidden the fact that he used to be a Freemason, says Esther. My husband turned his life around and started serving the true God, Jehovah. People who have tried to expose Masonry in the past suffered just like me. In fact, many just disappeared. End of quote.
I just thought the devil is horrible. People are accusing me of being a devil worshipper, and I'm watching a devil here and saying the devil is horrible.
The fingers of accusation point both directions, but question remains, how did Esther fall in the hands of such controversial men? She explains in her email that her parents left her to navigate her way through life on her own from the age of 12. Although her parents declined to comment, she claims they abandoned her to relatives. She grew up in Ethiopia but attended Kenya High School. As soon as I finished Form 4, I came to Australia again on my own, she says. I lived like I wanted, worked hard, partied hard, studied hard. By the time I relocated to Kenya at 26, although on the outside I looked like I had achieved much, I was very, very naive and looking for direction in life. I rededicated my life to God, and a year later, I got into the murky world of television. She regrets ever being an anchor. Esther goes on to explain that landing a job in TV made her passionately seek God. She states, I knew that life in front of the camera would give me access to a life of hedonism and excesses that would potentially lead me down a path I did not want to follow. It is in this state of searching for spiritual guidance that she says she met Helen at the International Christian Center. It's been 4 years now since they parted ways. Much has changed since then. After our 6-hour chat in her house in Brisbane, Esther wrote, and I quote, Sylvia, you met me face to face. You saw my disposition. I have no malice at heart or desire for revenge anymore. Especially during this last week or so, I let go of a lot of anger and hate. It was liberating. Sylvia Chebet for the Newsmakers series, Citizen TV.